and put it on the board. There is the skin still on the fish, and if you run your hand over it, there are some bones in it, pin bones that are still there. So here's what we need to do. First things first, let's take the skin off of the fish. Start at the tail end and cut through the meat, but not through the skin. You want to leave about an inch so you've got a little handle, and you're going to take the knife and glide it between the skin and the meat while you pull back on the skin from the tail end. Now, don't angle the knife too far down towards the skin or you'll cut through the skin. Neither should you angle it up or you'll cut into the meat. You want it to glide parallel to the board. As the knife pushes forward, move the skin back. And there's our fish, and there's our skin. That we're going to discard. Now, as I said, there are some pin bones in here. Sometimes you'll see people take tweezers like this and pull the bones out. In this particular fish, they don't pull out very cleanly. If they did, I could simply use this and pull them out. What I'm going to do is cut them out because they're a little bit persnickety. So feel where the bones are, put your knife to one side or the other, and then just cut down right next to the bones. And you'll know where they stop because you stop feeling them. I'm going to cut down the other side of the bones. And the bones are contained in that little piece of flesh there. That goes away. And for our purposes, I'm looking for a piece of fish about 4 ounces. This we'll set aside. Let's see how our chorizo is coming along. I want to put a little bit of color on it. It smells great. I can smell the garlic and the paprika in the chorizo. I'm keeping the chowder hot. I'm going to turn it up just a hair. And what we're going to do is bread this fish with potato. Now, potato, that's not like flour, that's not like cornflakes. How are we going to bread it? What I have here is instant mashed potatoes, instant mashed potato flakes, actually. And if you're doing a standard breading, this is exactly what it looks like. You start with flour and you pat off all of the excess. The flour clings to what it is that you're breading. And then you go from flour into egg, and the egg actually sticks to the flour and provides the glue that takes your breading and sticks that. So first things first, we'll season this fish with a little bit of salt and pepper on both sides. I'm only going to bread this on one side. So I start in the flour and then pat off all the excess. And then into the egg, let that drip off, and then into the instant mashed potatoes. We've got some browning happening on this chorizo. I'm going to let it cook a little bit more, but we'll just move it to the side, and I'll take this piece of fish and put it into the pan, and we're going to cook it in that flavorful fat. I'll turn it up so that it browns nicely. And I would say this is going to take probably, conservatively, about 8 minutes per inch of thickness. So this is about 3/4 of an inch thick. I think it's going to take 6 minutes or so. Once the fish is golden on the first side, flip it over and allow it to cook from the bottom, and that way it can cook evenly all the way through. You want the fish to be just opaque, but still moist in the center. And as I said, this piece has cooked for about 6 minutes. I've got it turned off now, and I'm going to show you a little garnish that we're going to add. In Spain, oftentimes they would serve clams and chorizo with a garlic mayonnaise, alioli. And so I'm going to take this mayonnaise that I put garlic into. I'm going to put a little lemon zest into it as well because this is going with fish. And this will basically be a really simple sauce that can start from the commercial mayonnaise that's in your refrigerator. Typically that mayonnaise is a little bit thick, and so I would thin it out with even some of the broth from your soup. until you get a nice, almost pourable consistency. If it doesn't feel sensuous, it probably isn't sensuous. All right, so let's get started here. Here's a plate, and we're going to add some chowder. You can see I've got big chunks of chorizo in there as well. This chowder now is not just a soup, but actually a sauce for this piece of fish that's cooking, the potato-crusted cod. You know, I have a couple of clams that I left in the shell, and I think something like that might make a nice garnish. So I'm going to put 2 or 3 of those in the plate. Just for some color, I'm going to get some parsley in here. And then our fish, which is cooked and ready to go, is going to be added to the plate. Now remember, we made this delicious mayonnaise, so a little dollop of the mayonnaise and some chives. And the same soup you had for dinner last night becomes a party dish the next day. So the story of chowder doesn't end just because you leave the Atlantic Ocean behind. I've got laid out here in front of me everything that you need to make a farmstead chowder. In this case, a corn chowder. Now, you know the technique already. I taught it to you. Take a look. We rendered bacon in a pan, and once we have that flavorful fat, in goes onions and celery. I'm going to add a branch of thyme and a couple of bay leaves, and those can go in as well. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit and suggest that if you want a soup that's a little bit more robust, a little bit thicker, you could add some flour to this pan and make a little bit of roux, a thickener. Especially if you want to move from cream to a low-fat dairy product like half and half or even milk, which likes to break, you can add flour and that will hold it together. So here's what I would do. I would take a little bit of flour and sprinkle it in here, and then mix it with the flavorful fat that's in the bottom of the pan. That's the roux. That's going to be doing the thickening. Now, think about this for a second. We don't have clam liquor to make our soup. What do we have available? Well, how about chicken broth? So I have some chicken broth right here. I'm going to add a small amount, and as it comes up to a boil, that flour will thicken. I can see it happening in the bottom of the pan, and I can use that thickness to break up any lumps, and then add a little bit more, and again, use that thickness to break up any lumps. With each progressive addition of liquid, it will become looser and looser. And at some point, it will get to the point where it's almost liquid, at which point I can add the rest of my chicken broth, and my soup is on its way. You can see right here, right now, that this is liquid. Just a word of caution, don't evaluate consistency until it comes to a boil. Every starch thickens at a different temperature, but all of them are completely thickened at a boil. All right, now we'll add the rest of this chicken stock. We'll add the potatoes, and it occurred to me as I looked at these potatoes that it's also almost a benefit if they're cut a little unevenly, because the smaller pieces will give body to your soup, and the thicker pieces will stay behind as the garnish for your soup. We're going to add corn to this. And I've got a nice bowl of corn. We'll add that as well. Corn also gives you corn starch, and so this will thicken your soup a little bit. And let me quickly just tell you how to cut this corn off the cob. I've got 2 ears of yellow corn. White corn, if you find it in the market, will be more tender and sweeter, but if you're looking for a full, rich corn flavor, then I would say yellow corn is really where you want to go. Here's a bowl, and upside down inside that bowl is a smaller bowl. I'm going to take and just rest that cob of corn right on that small bowl, and then with my knife,